guys, welcome back to my channel. Lucky you, got 2 videos this week. I kind of did a little bit of, I think my camera's wonky, just give me a minute. Start again, that's sorted. Welcome back to my channel. You guys have been lucky to get 2 videos this week because I did a little bit of asking about over on my TikTok, Bookishly Coffee Life, and asked people kind of what their days that they watched YouTube videos were on, and the majority of people were kind of saying Sundays and the weekend. So I thought I'm gonna try and upload my videos either on a Saturday or Sunday, so it's nearer to that time for everybody to watch. So this week I've obviously posted one on Tuesday. As you can see, I've got my cozy reading jumper on. And if you watched my last video, you would have seen the subscription box that I got this from She Made It, which was just incredible. My first ever subscription box. I was really pleased with what I got in there. Today's video, because it is the end of the month, we are going to do my November reading wrap up. This month, I read 3 full books, and then half of one book and half the other. So technically, 4 books, if we're going to be fussy. But yeah, so I'm going to go through which books I read in November, review them as well, talk a little bit about them without going into too much of spoiler territory. I kind of won't say any more than what's in the blurb and what kind of how the book is advertised on in stores and stuff. So yeah, let's get started. The first books I read, I say books because I read 2 books. It was a duology, and it was the Shepherd King duology by Rachel Gillick. So it starts with One Dark Window, which I started at the end of October to get into those spooky season vibes, and then straight away, as soon as I finished that one, I went into book 2, which is Two Twisted Crowns. The reason I saved this duology for Halloween is because it was described as gothic setting, dark, romantasy, and it really lived up to those expectations as well. It's very different to any other romantasy and fantasy series that I have read before. I like how with this book, it is more fantasy. There's this little sprinkling of romance, a little tiny bit of spice in there, but it is majority fantasy, and the romance doesn't kind of take away from that story plot. Sometimes in a romantasy book, as much as I love romance and I don't complain, I know a lot of people feel like they lose that fantasy aspect to a book because of the romance in it, but this book balances it out really well. It is mainly fantasy, but you have got that sprinkling of romance in there as well. So, book 1 follows Elspeth, and I absolutely love the names in here as well. Elspeth has magical powers, shall we say. In her mind, she has somebody that is with her and she calls it the Nightmare. And book 1 is all in Elspeth's POV, all in her point of view, obviously with the Nightmare in there as well. And it follows her story, kind of trying to figure out their magical system and getting rid of the mist that has taken over their village, town, or city as well. She meets Raven, a little bit of kind of enemies to lover kind of trope in there, a little bit of enemies to lover trope. I wouldn't say it's slow burn. Their romance kind of progresses quite quickly within this book. It is a really nice romance, and I love the way that they both kind of open up to each other throughout the journey as well in book 1 and book 2. But book 1 is purely Elspeth's point of view. We don't get anybody else. It's written in first person in her, and so you are Elspeth as you are reading it. I'll read a little bit from back just so I don't ruin it for you guys. So Elspeth Spindle needs more than luck to stay safe in the eerie, mist-locked kingdom of Blunder. She needs a monster. She calls him the Nightmare, an ancient, mercurial spirit trapped in her head. He protects her, He keeps her secrets, but nothing comes for free, especially magic. When Elspeth meets a mysterious highwayman on the forest road, she is thrust into a world of shadow and deception. Together they embark on a dangerous quest to cure the town of Blunder from the dark magic infecting it. As the stakes heighten and their undeniable attraction intensifies, Elspeth is forced to face her darkest secret yet. The nightmare is slowly, darkly taking over her mind, and she might not be able to stop him. So it is very much following the journey of Elspeth and the nightmare not taking over Elspeth's body too much because of the magical system that is in Blunder and in kind of their world. And this mist is slowly taken over as well. So it follows Elspeth and her group of friends on a journey to get rid of the mist and obviously get rid of Nightmare as well for Elspeth. I absolutely love this book. I rated both books 4.5 stars. I read it so quickly. I really kind of got into it and was pleasantly surprised, I think, because it was very different to my type of fantasy book that I read. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. However, I know there is mixed reviews on kind of Goodreads and TikTok and things. Not everybody does enjoy it. However, I did enjoy book one really well. And then as we get from book one, we go on to book two. And book two has multiple POVs in there. So it follows the point of views of Elspeth and Nightmare together. It also includes Elm and Raven, who you were obviously introduced to in book one. So there's 3 point of views within this book. First of all, I was a little bit confused and probably a little bit disappointed because I do enjoy one point of view and first person more than I do when there's multiple, because I find like sometimes it complicates the story. However, a character that really irritated me in here, I fell in love with in here because of their point of view. Again, there's a new romance in this book as well. It is more slow burn. It is more kind of enemies to lover a little bit as well. But again, I rated this 4.5 star. It carries on from their journey and trying to get rid of the mist and get rid of the nightmare that's inside of Elspeth's mind as well. But it's a fantastic end to the story, this is, and kind of everything that's interwoven and all those little Easter eggs that were introduced in both books come together to an absolutely incredible ending as well. Disappointed that it was kind of only 2 books, but I think it was perfect for the series. I felt like if there was any more, it probably would have dragged a little bit. But yeah, 4.5 stars for this book as well. Amazing, gothic, eerie, dark fantasy with that sprinkle of romance, little bit of spice, but it doesn't really go into that too much. It balances the world building, the story of the plot really well so that nothing takes over each other. It's so well balanced that you don't kind of get lost into any of it. It's really easy to follow. The thing that I absolutely love about this duology is the unique magic system as well, using kind of, it's a bit of like a tarot cards vibe. And I really like that idea, and I feel like that probably had me enjoying it a little bit more because I was really intrigued. It was a little bit hard to follow at first when it was first introduced, but I think it is with all books that kind of have their own world building and own magical systems as well. But it didn't take very long to grasp it once kind of the story got going in One Dark Window. So yeah, 4.5 stars for the Shepherd King series. If you love fantasy, if you love romantasy, if you want to try a little bit of a dark fantasy and you're not normally that type of genre reader, this is probably a really good duology to go for, to kind of dip your toes in and see if you would like that genre. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this. After the Shepherd King series, I wanted to kind of stick with that. I was fully into my dark fantasy era after reading One Dark Window. I wanted to stick with that a little bit and stick with the spooky vibe, seeing as we were still at the start of November when I started my next book. This series was never on my TBR. This series didn't take my fancy. I didn't like what the covers were like and the spines. The kind of blurbs and what I was reading about the series in general didn't really kind of spark any interest within me. So it was never on my TBR until I bought, or was bought for Christmas, the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. Well, the first book in that series. I was going to start reading that. Luckily, I put it onto my BookTok account and somebody on there told me that it carries on. So the Once Upon a Broken Heart series carries on from the Caraval series. So I was a bit like, oh, do I have to read Caraval? Is it something that I need to? And they kind of said, no, you could probably read it without reading Caraval, but I think you'll enjoy it more if you did read Caraval. So I kind of took that, I processed it. It took me, I think that was about a year ago, and I finally picked up Caraval. Okay, I was very kindly bought this book as a book fairy over on BookTok. It didn't come with a note, but somebody did very kindly buy it for me, so I thought, let's go for it. I don't know whether it's because I didn't have any expectations around this book. I wasn't really thinking I was going to enjoy it, but I ate this up. I loved it. I think it is an absolutely incredible book. Again, it's a book that's got very mixed feelings and mixed reviews, but I really, really enjoyed it. And I don't know, again, like I said, I don't know whether it's because I didn't have those expectations from everybody else on how I was going to find it. It is, I would describe it as maybe like a YA fantasy, maybe starting to dip into the adult fantasy genre, purely because there is romance in here, but it's very limited. There's like a little sprinkle here and there. You see the romances develop, but you don't really get anything else. There's not kind of that spice element, which is very kind of your typical YA book. But I absolutely loved this. I loved the kind of circus and magic system setting that it has, the whole point of the games. I loved following Scarlet's story and Donatella, her sister. This book is written in third person, so although it very much followed Scarlet mainly, it is written in third person. But still, I liked getting to know Scarlet through this story and understand her a little bit more, and all the twists and turns that came with it. This whole concept of Caraval is some absolute fantastic thinking from Stephanie Garber, because who has the brains to come up with all of this and write another three, because she's done Spectacular now, another 3 books following this to do with Caraval as well, which is brilliant. It's all following Scarlet and Donatella. They have to complete the Caraval. They're looking for freedom. They want to escape kind of their childhood home, and they lost their mother, so they live with their father, who is not a very nice man. So it very much follows their story of escaping and joining in with the Caraval game. On their way, they meet friends, they meet new characters, they get to know this mysterious character called Legend, who is like the main kind of lead of the whole Caraval, but nobody knows who he is. They just know his name, but there's a bit of a backstory around them, and it kind of follows their story trying to figure that all out without going into too much detail for you guys. So I'll read the blurb for you. Once a year, the infamous Master Legend hosts Caraval, open only to those who have been invited. This year, the week-long game is on Legend's glittering Isla de los Sueños, where the winding streets are an elaborate snow-covered maze and the people are never who they seem. At midnight on the first day, the show begins and the visitors become players. Each of them is vying for their coveted prize, a single wish. All they must do is unravel the mystery of Caraval, but in a game where danger hides behind every charming smile, winning isn't without loss, and their wish might be their last. So yeah, I love this. Something that I think puts people off a lot with this book is the heaviness of the description. It's really quite over the top with the describing of the world building and the way that the characters are feeling, to the bit where I started off and I was like, what on earth is this? Like, I cannot get my brain, never mind my autistic brain, my brain around this description. It was so hypothetical, I think is the word to describe it. Let me give you an example of what it's like. And it was right at the start and I was just like, what on earth? Here. Scarlett's feelings came in colours even brighter than usual. The urgent red of burning coals, the eager green of new grass buds, the frenzied yellow of a flapping bird's feathers. He'd finally written back. Like, I just read that, I was like, how is she actually feeling? Because you've described red, green and yellow there to me, and I don't know how Scarlett is feeling at this moment in time. Whether that was what Stephanie wanted to put across, I haven't got a clue, but I nearly didn't carry on. But I persevered, and I would encourage anybody to persevere, because the amount of description... Sorry, my dog is just starting to... Thanks, Winston. It does get less, and it doesn't get the description isn't as intense as you go through the story. I mean, it is still a lot more description than normal, but it the belt gets lowered a little bit. It's not as hard to follow. But yeah, I rated Caraval 4 stars because I was very pleasantly surprised. I found it a really incredible book and I couldn't wait to read the rest. I only had Caraval though, and I needed to order the rest. And I don't like the covers. They just don't... I just don't find them pretty, or they don't want to make me want to buy it. I love the American covers. And I was looking for just the American covers, and I saw somebody share something from Amazon where you could get a box set of the paperback American covers versions for like £27. So 3 books for £27. The American versions of the books with the covers, and it was coming from America, and it was free delivery. Free delivery? Like, what? They came with a little bit of damage on the box because literally they were not protected whatsoever in the delivery. But I saw that in the reviews and I kind of had my fingers crossed. The books are fine, which is all that matters. The box has taken the brunt of it, especially the corners. But I got the American paperback versions, and look how much bigger it is. Let me get... the size difference on the book. It's crazy. So I ordered these, but they didn't come. It took about a week and a half for these to be delivered. So after I finished Caraval, and whilst I was waiting for my new babies to come, I read the next book in the Chestnut Spring series. And the next book for me was Powerless by Elsie Silver. I've loved all of her books. Every single time I read one of her books, it becomes one of my favourites. They are that good and that well written. The only one that I wasn't too keen on was Wild Love, the first one of the Rose Hill series, Wild Love. I still enjoyed it, but that was the first ever one of her books that I read, and I was a bit like, is this what they're like? From that, I read book 1 in the Chestnut Spring series. I fell in love with Rhett and Summit in book 1. Absolutely loved the whole story. Then went on to book 2 and fell in love with Cade and Willa. Obviously recognising Willa from Wild Love as well. And that came one of my favourite ones. And now I have read this book. I tell you what, I didn't really like Jasper and Sloane in the other books. They were really quiet characters and I feel like I didn't have much of a connection with them in comparison to like the other books where Willow was quite heavily in Summer's book in book 1. So I felt like I knew Willow a little bit more. But I felt like I was coming in a little bit blind with Jasper and Sloane in this one, which was the purpose of it. I now know that. But this book is so beautifully and respectfully written. I fell in love. Such sensitive topics it holds within here, with kind of Sloane's bringing up and obviously Jasper's as well, and how he was brought into the Eaton family. I love that we got to know more, but only as the story went on. Like we were slowly unpicking at Jasper and his backstory. And I love how we followed Sloane's story to be able to unpick and find out more about Jasper as well. And honestly, it's absolutely heartbreaking in both ways. Heartbreaking in what they've both been through, heartbreaking in the fact that I have fallen well and truly love with both of them. I was heartbroken when I finished the story. And also, secret main character in this book is, shout out goes to Harvey. Harvey Eaton is just a beautiful man. He's so lovely. I literally was like nearly crying with tears with what he was like in this book and what he was like with Jasper. Want a book with spice? This is your book for you. But this very much follows Jasper and Sloane's story. I really love these types of series where you still touch base with the characters from kind of previous books, and you start to get to know characters in the next couple of books as well, because obviously I know it's Winter and Theo's book next, and I like how that we found out a bit more about Winter in this book and the friendship that she creates with Sloane as well. But I love how they were childhood friends, and it followed their development of feelings and them developing into adults as well. But I love how intense this story starts as well. Like we start right at when Sloane's getting married, and everything just blows up from there. And I love that, how literally it gets really into it straight away. It is one of the longer books out of her series as well, which I love. I think it was needed because there was a lot to unpick. There was a lot of depth to the book as well. But I think I rated this 5 stars, guys, and I have with all the other 2 books from the Chestnut series, because I eat these books up so quickly. I read them within 3 days, which is really quick for me, and I absolutely fall in love with all the characters every single time. I just can't help it. It's the Elsie Silver way, isn't it? So yeah, if you love cowboy, this is obviously, it's still set in cowboy, but more ice hockey and ballerina. But if you love cowboy, if you want to get into that romance era, want spice, this series is for you. And I love this book. I can't wait to read Reckless and Hopeless, which is the last 2 books in the series. Which then brings us on to the book that I am currently halfway through, which is Legendary. So again, I am halfway through this, so I've not finished this yet, but we carry on from Caraval. Basically, straight away from where this finishes, we go on for the second book. Still written in third person, but we are now following mainly Donatella, which is Scarlett's sister. Okay, and she's on this. We find out a lot more around what happens behind the scenes with Donatella in Caraval at the start of Legendary, and it starts to follow her completing one of the Caraval missions. But obviously it's very different to the first one, and I'm really enjoying this. Like I said, I've read 50%. I only started it a few days ago, so it's really is fantastic, and I can't wait to see how it develops. But I will give you a review of that in my December wrap up. December, I can't believe it's Christmas nearly. So yeah, guys, one of my longer videos, so I do apologize if it's quite long, but I love books. I love talking about books, and I hope you guys like listening to me talking about the books that I've read as well. That was my November reading wrap up. I'm going to say I read 4 books in total, because that was 2 halves, which make a whole. 4 books in total. really highly rated books as well that I've read this month. I feel like I'm very much gone into my dark fantasy era as well with these. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to finishing the Caraval series and seeing how that finishes, so that in 2025 I can actually start, after having Once Upon a Broken Heart for 2 years, I can actually start reading it, which I'm excited because I've heard that that series is even better than Caraval, which is exciting. I'm also getting a Kindle for Christmas. I've been a paperback girly, as you can tell, forever. But I'm finally, some might say I'm finally going to the dark side. I'm becoming a Kindle girly as well, so that'll be interesting to see how that goes in after Christmas. Yeah, thank you. Let me know, guys, in the comments what you've read this month, whether you've got any book recommendations of books that you'd like me to read, any books that you think I'd enjoy as well. I'm always looking for books to join my never-ending TBR. Thanks for listening, as always. Love to you all, and see you next week.